It on when
It
you
probably
walk
makes
through
the
the
scenes darker
house.
rather than lighter.
Right. How's that like?
That's better.
Okay, you're recording now.
Okay.
When and where were you born?
Melvin, I was born in Enoch, Texas. The town don't exist anymore. We went back a few years back. It was just a post office and a trailer. And that's in West Texas in 1929.
Okay, and what do you know about your name and why was it chosen for you?
I don't know how it became, but my parents agreed to the name, and it was Alton Everett Cox, born in 1929.
And you were saying something about a mix-up about the doctor.
Well, I was born with a midwife, and her name was Blaylock, and then the doctor comes by within the next week, and the doctor came by and checked me, and the doctor takes the information to put it in the certificate, Bureau of Vital Statistics, and the doctor transcribed my name from Alton to Allen, A-L-L-E-N, instead of A-L-T-O-N.
Okay. And what do you remember about your childhood and your family and home and neighborhood?
I start remembering when I was about 5 years old, and that was in the deep part of the Depression in 1934, and we moved about every 3 months because there was no vitality, no income from no source. So everybody had to help each other. The people that were around all contributed food. So those were the hard times.
Do you have any favorite stories about when you were a small child or during your childhood?
I can't recall any specific small story. I do remember the first time I can remember is when I was 5 years old, and our parents had a crop of tomatoes, and I woke up and they were out working, and I went out to find them and my feet froze. I was 5 years old. That was the first memory I ever had.
Who was your first friend?
I don't recall.
Was there one before?
Leonard Bill?
Yeah, before Leonard.
Oh, there was a number of friends. I had friends, but I don't have any direct relationship.
You said there were many places that you lived while you were growing up. Is there one that stands out more than others?
Unfortunately, they were all bad, and I can't remember.
The little schoolhouse that you went to with those boys? What? The little schoolhouse that you went to with those boys, and one kept picking on you, and you didn't hear?
When I was 7 years old, we moved back to East Texas. That would be about 1937. We had to walk to school, which is about 3 miles. And there was one kid, I remember the kid, but his name was Van Dyke. And I let him get away with, the kids with the bully type kids. And one time on the way to school, I took all I was going to take. We got in a fight, and I got his ear in my mouth, and I was biting on it, holding his ear tight. And his friends would start to tell him to do something to retaliate against me, and I'd bite down harder. I remember telling him with his ear in my mouth, he was telling me to do anything else, I'll bite your ear off. And after that, he was no longer a bully because everybody seen him being put down because the person he was bullied all those months had turned on him and put him totally down. So that's the one guy I remember.
Now, you mentioned the Depression, that there was a time in the period, and you remember that concerning the Depression. Are there any other events like wars or anything else, special events that happened in your childhood?
I can remember Depression that my dad had a car. He got a car somewhere. You could buy cars for like $20, $30, $50, all kinds of cars in those price ranges. But gasoline was 10 cents a gallon, and nobody could afford gasoline. So you rode horses back to town. I mean, if you went to town, you went with a wagon and horse. So, and all neighbors contributed to each other. Everybody supported each other. In other words, if somebody had something to eat, everybody had something to eat, even if it wasn't much. But that was in their early years.
Are there any other meaningful experiences that you'd like to relate to, you can think of?
I can't recall, probably.
Umpteen,
Huh?
thousands of experiences.
Oh yeah, there's all kinds of experiences. Oh, I remember when I was in the second grade, everybody used to, and you asked where we lived, in East Texas after we moved from West Texas. That's when I was like 6, 7 years old. I was in school. I had a slingshot, and after school I lived close to this. This was the second school after the school I was telling you about, and I was in the second grade. And since I went back, I got my slingshot and walking. I was going to go visit. My grandparents didn't live too far away, which they had to walk about 3 miles, and I had the slingshot. The one kid says, "Shoot at the baseball." He threw the baseball up, and as I'd come back down, and I don't know how it happened, but the ball fell down. And I shot and hit him right between the eyes. Hit it. He was cut it right to the scalp. There was a teacher running in and I wasn't even on the school ground, but I was on the street going by the school. And they picked me up and took me into the school, and then had to drive the kid to the hospital, which was several miles to the little town.
Okay.
But anyway, I remember the vice principal on the next day, they brought me into school, and they give you, in those days, they give you, they call them whoopings, but they didn't call them spanks. They call them
Switch?
whoopings.
Oh.
Got a whooping. And they really give you, they beat the hell out of you. And that was the school, I don't remember that way. The hierarchy of schools is different in those years. You had only about four teachers. Anyway, I remember that one. That was when I was really young.
Now you mentioned your grandparents. Which grandparents were you going to visit? Would that have been James Matthew?
No, that was the Wilson family.
Oh, the Wilson side.
And the Wilson.
That is Francis Marion?
I don't know.
That's the only
Grandpa Wilson.
The thing of it is, I only knew him for a few months, and we moved from the location. That's the last I saw him because I passed.
Okay, name all of your, for the record, name your brothers and your sister. Maybe tell us a little, some of your memories about your brothers and your sister.
My oldest brother, Clifford, which is your father, he was 16 years older than me, and he never lived at home when I was a kid. He's already gone. And Basil, my second brother down, he's younger than Clifford, and he had already gone too. So I had my brother Clifford and Basil, and I had a sister named Louise, and she was 8 years older than me. So there was kind of two groups of the family. So with Clifford being 16 years, and Basil, the three older kids had all got off on their own by the time I was 7 or 8 years old.
What about Algie?
Algie's 2.5 years old, younger than me. And he was the one that always got in trouble. He was always picked, even when he was real young,
He was the little
he would pick a fight and expect me to finish it. That was, I'm talking about, this is when he was probably 5, now 7, and that happened all the way through until went through school. So he was always the one that got in the fights.
He was the little rascal.
And
That's all.
other than that's essentially what I know.
How about, what do you remember about Louise? She played the accordion, did she?
She learned to play the accordion by, they called it by playing by, they learn by ear. They don't have an instructor giving them the stick. Yeah, she learned to play the accordion by just being in a church group.
Mm-hmm.
They were very religious and went to church 3 times a week because that was their social life, was social connection. And they would get together and eat at each other's families, you know, their community type things. So I remember that's how basically my position on religion got started, when these preachers would preach directly toward us. And you gotta repent and you gotta do all this. Anyway, I detected, even at my young age, about 10 years old, I sat back and think, the way they talked, I said, "You crazy son of a gun, you're in my own head. You don't know what you're talking about. They tell you gotta have faith. It's all based on faith, not fact." So that as I grew up, I resisted religion. I was the only one in the family that,
It affected you when you were small.
well, it affected me in my concepts of fact, of what it really was.
Okay.
Not just believe what everybody tells you, but believe what is real. And that's how I got involved in the hypnosis thing.
Well, during your teenage years, and I know you had hobbies because you took an interest in radios. How old were you when you really got involved with electronics?
We moved to California when I was, in 1941, my brother Basil, your father, when the war started, he went to Washington, Bremerton, Washington, started working in the shipyard, rebuilding the ships that had been blown up in Pearl Harbor. And then he sent us money to come to Bremerton, Washington, for my father to work in that shipyard. So my father, I'll never forget the old, he had an old 1931 Chevrolet Roadster that had the back seat.
Rumble seat.
The rumble seat. Well, he ripped that out and built it up to make it like a pickup. You know, widened it and built a wood to move household goods. And we came from Texas through LA, and when the war started, World War II started, they started with immediately had a Russian gas, and they put speed limits of 30 miles an hour. My voice is real good. Excuse me.
Can you pause it?
Yeah.